Can Nigeria truly have it both ways? Human rights and development, or must one be sacrificed for the other? From the Lekki tollgate protests to forced evictions in Abuja, the question keeps haunting us. Are we building a nation of prosperity or a state that tramples on dignity in the name of progress? Across the world, nations struggle with this balance. Should economic growth come first, even if it means sacrificing some freedoms? Or must human rights be fully guaranteed before development can be sustainable? In Nigeria, the tension is real. Citizens demand dignity, justice, and security. Yet, government after government insists on tough reforms and development projects, sometimes at the expense of people's rights. This is where I welcome you to Politics Uncensored. Today, we are confronting a critical dilemma for Nigeria's future. Can we truly achieve human rights and development at the same time? Our goal will always be to provide a platform for open and honest discussions where experts and everyday citizens like yourself can share your perspectives and insights. Of course, your favorite show. And we have two expert guests who will be joining us very soon. I'm your host, Okikiola Taiwo Jalekon, and you can call me the Polyhumanitarian. And I'm here to make political discussions accessible to you all. I want to hear from you because all of our episode is all about you. So you can be a part of our conversations every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to add your voice to these discussions. You can also head on to our YouTube channel at Official Upgrade TV. Hit that subscribe button, like, share, and invite your friends to join the show right now. Our phone lines are also open to you. You can call us on 070-2500-7749 and 070-1424-2420. Let's hear what you have to say. We'll go on a short break right now, and when we return, we'll take you through our top stories in the political space, making headlines, and also introduce to you our guests. So do not go anywhere. We'll be right back shortly.
This season on Heartlands, we're committed to making a difference in people's lives. So Heartlands, in partnership with Consult, is offering 12 every quarter for people in need of professional counseling. Additionally, we're taking on 2 pro bono cases for individuals navigating a challenging divorce. To participate, please send an email to counsel@vedaconsult.com with your story. Our team will carefully review all submissions and will contact all the shortlisted candidates. Heartlines is live Mondays to Fridays at 10 p.m. So engage with us.
Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population, and with little or no meaningful engagement, leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And Let's all have our say.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
You are still watching Politics Uncensored, and today we'll be discussing human rights and development. Can Nigeria truly achieve both? And, you know, governments often argue that tough reforms, infrastructure projects, and economic sacrifices are necessary for growth, even if the people's rights are bruised in the process. On the other hand, human rights defenders insist that development without dignity is meaningless. But where does that leave us? The citizens struggling, to survive between poverty and injustice, or the reality we currently confront? Across the world, this debate is definitely not new. China has pursued rapid development while curbing freedoms. South Africa protects the right but still struggles with inequality. Rwanda showcases order and growth, but question remains about its political freedoms. So where does Nigeria stand? Can we create a model that balances both? And we're asking this question to our audiences. Many times we see a lot of cases where we are clamoring for human rights over and over again, and then we have the government still clamoring for economic reforms and even development. At the end of the day, we end up going to protests, we see evictions, we see poverty, we see inequality, we see unemployment continue to rise. So if I'm going to start asking the questions to our audiences and even to myself, would we consider a road project worthy if it displaces family without compensation? Is this necessary? Is removing subsidies truly progress if citizens can no longer afford food and transport? I'll tell you for a fact that when I came in this afternoon, I struggled to afford transportation. So is it really necessary removing subsidy if at the end of the day we cannot afford food or transportation? And does development even mean anything if citizens cannot speak, protest, or hold their leaders accountable? I've always asked that beyond protest, what else can we do as Nigerians to ask for change? I'll remind us of the Lekki toll gate incident that happened in 2020. Young Nigerians, up until the time the thing became an hijacked protest, young Nigerians demanded justice and police reform, but met with bullets. This is still an argument that we have every single day, where the government is saying there were plastic bullets. There were a lot of controversies that happened with the Lekki toll gate incident, but the major thing was that young Nigerians came out to protest against police brutality, but met with bullets. But of course, these are part of the things that we should start addressing, that beyond what Nigeria is at this point, can human rights and development can we start to achieve both? And we currently have Comrade Emmanuel Nnadozie Onwubiko, who is the founder of Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, URIWA, one of Nigeria's most outspoken rights advocates. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Very much.
Wonderful. So I would like your insight on one of the stories making headlines in the political news this morning. And it's saying here that SIRAP gives Tinubu 7-day ultimatum to stop politicians' pay rise. This group has called on President Bola Tinubu to immediately suspend a proposed salary increase for political office holders, including the president, vice president, governors, their deputies, and lawmakers. The organization in the letter labeled the proposal as patently unlawful and unconstitutional. It urged Tinubu to direct the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission to halt the pay rise, which argues violates Nigeria's constitution and international human rights obligations. The imminent pay rise for the political and public office holder in Nigeria, particularly the president, vice president, governors, and their deputies and lawmaker, is gross misuse of the remarks constitutional and statutory mandates. Beyond this story reads quite a lot of things. And just last week, we had an argument about why there should be an increment for salaries for legislative aides and political appointees. They argued that they were not getting paid enough for their services because their services is tied to their principals and the fact that they're always appointed. But as a human rights activist, would you agree with this story that it is necessary for politicians and political office holders to get a salary increment over the 133 million Nigerians who are probably under the poverty line right now?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it is irrational, it is unjust, it is discriminatory against Section 41, subsection 1, I think 41(1) or thereabout, that prohibits discriminatory policies on the basis of class, on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of gender. It is unconstitutional for the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission to always come around telling Nigerians the need for that agency to arbitrarily increase the salaries and allowances of political office holders in Nigeria. It is absurd, especially coming against the backdrop of the very obvious fact that millions of Nigerians are facing absolute and multidimensional poverty, both absolute and multidimensional poverty. Even considering a report that was done by a government or publicly funded agency, the National Statistics Agency in Nigeria, the National Office of Statistics, or whatever name they go by, issued a comprehensive poverty records of Nigerians in 2018 and authoritatively issued the data that show that Nigerians, about 133 million Nigerian households are undergoing multidimensional poverty. So for politicians to now instigate the Federal Allocation and Fiscal Commission, which is an agency of government that is populated by politicians, because basically those who are council members or commissioners in that commission are APC members who were railroaded to that commission by the APC-controlled federal government. So it's like politicians now conspiring to fix their salaries, to make themselves so well paid in the midst of mass poverty. So it's quite constitutional. And if you look at the obvious fact that the National Assembly in Nigeria will have less than 500 individuals who are members of that National Assembly, but the total budget goes to those 500 Nigerians far outweighs the collective budget that is spent in very strategic ministries like education, like health, like roads, infrastructure, and very many other very important economic infrastructures
Absolutely.
that are necessary for human development in Nigeria. So you now have a gang of 500 people who bunched together as National Assembly members, cornering over 30% of the annual budget to themselves. And now you have a fiscal revenue and fiscal commission who, I mean, they just said that it's incapable of checking the illegal allowances that the National Assembly members are awarded to themselves. The Commission is unable to take steps to make sure that the National Assembly legislators do not corner half of the resources of Nigeria every year to service their whims and caprices. And now the Commission is coming to tell us that they want to increase salaries for politicians. It doesn't really make sense, to begin with.
Thank you very much, Comrade Emmanuel. I've always clamored for making governance not as attractive as it is now. But look at, we're still having situations where there's a clamor for salary increment. And I believe, or I expected more from the president, looking that he is putting so much economic reforms in place, or has brought these social reform, that social reform here and there. And then we're still seeing that other space in the economy or in Nigeria is still getting more payments when a lot of Nigerians are still suffering. Just last week, we still spoke about vocational trainings and all of these so-called initiatives that they have brought into place. But after these programs, 2-3 months of trainings, good or bad, they throw these same youths back into the same system where they picked them from. So it's still that we're going back to square one. The Nigerians are asking, or we're asking young Nigerians not to jackpot, to stay in Nigeria and fix Nigeria, make Nigeria work. But they are seeing a particular group, getting more while they suffer continuously. And I would say these are taxpayers' money, but obviously they're not seeing the result of their taxes. So I'm clamoring for governance to look as less attractive as possible. So I would say that I enjoined myself a syrup to call on the president to reverse whatever sham this is, so that we can start to look at the governance system as the one that hears what Nigerians say. But this is all we can take on the political story for today. So we'll go on a very short break and then return, still discussing this hot topic. So do not go anywhere. We'll be right back shortly. Welcome back to the show. This is still Politics Uncensored, and we have Comrade Emmanuel here. So, Comrade, let me throw a ticking bomb under your chair. Critics have often, claimed that human rights group in Nigeria obstruct government tough measures, and they are saying that these tough measures could have driven, development, but human rights groups and organizations have been obstructing these measures. So how do you respond to that?
I don't subscribe to that statement, because it is not a statement of facts. It is not a statement that is backed up by any evidence, any empirical data. In fact, the CSO community in Nigeria, the NGO community or the human rights bodies in Nigeria are actually helping government to check certain excesses, certain corrupt practices in the area of finance, in the area of procurement, in the area of enforcement of laws, in the areas of security of lives and property of Nigeria. The organized civil society community in Nigeria has done quite a lot to try to ensure that those who are elected into government exercise their authority legitimately and in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and other legal statutes that contribute largely to the attainment of good governance in Nigeria. So I don't think it is a factual and accurate statement to be made, to try to criticize the CSO community or the human rights community in Nigeria as obstructing government. They're not even obstructing government. They're actually helping government to. I'm talking of the credible civil society organizations in Nigeria. They're actually not standing on the way of government, but actually helping government to critically address the infrastructural needs of Nigerians and to respect the rule of law, respect the due process of the law, to comply with human rights provisions of the Constitution, comply with the human rights obligations of the country that are codified in international treaties, international conventions, and even in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So it's not justifiable for anybody to argue that the civil society community is an obstacle to the attainment of good governance. Rather, credible civil society organizations in Nigeria are strategic partners in the pursuit of good governance standards in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Comrade. And I would say that I agree with you. When I saw the story of quite a number of people, criticizing human rights organizations as part of the problem, I started to highlight certain credible organizations who have brought forth infrastructural development issues and solutions in Nigeria, especially in the health and educational sector. So it is arguable that they might not even have their facts right. You have said that there's no justification in any way, and I completely agree with you. But we keep talking about human rights. We talk about human rights violation. People can come up today and say, "Oh, they have tampered with my rights as a Nigerian. They've tampered with theirs." So, in your experience, what rights violations most undermine Nigerians' development efforts? We are battling between protests, people being killed during protests, versus actually bringing development into Nigeria. So where exactly should we find the balance there? What is rights violation, and what's that thing that most undermines Nigeria's development efforts right now?
I think what exactly is the roots of most of the problems of underdevelopment that Nigerians are facing is basically, if we have to look at it from the fundamentals, the lack of structures and institutions that we effectively and efficiently work as checks and balances to the executive arm of government, to the legislative arm of government, and even the judiciary. Those institutions are very weak, either by way of default or by intentional, disobedience and disregard to the due process of the law on the part of those who are holding public offices in the three arms of government. So it is critical that Nigeria, have institutions that will be functional and strong enough to make sure that the executive arm of government does not continue in what a lot of Nigerians have said is state capture of the legislature and the judiciary. It seems like the executive arm of government has now collapsed the other two arms of government into one. The legislature and the judiciary have almost become subservient to the executive arm of government. And when I say executive arm of government, I mean the office of the president of Nigeria. The office of the president of Nigeria has illegally and unconstitutionally cornered a lot of powers to that office and has successfully dragged along the legislature and the judiciary to become like, sycophants or maybe, bootlickers of the executive arm of government. So much so that you can predict exactly what will happen in the court if the federal government or if a certain minister in Nigeria, a certain minister that everybody knows, if you have any issue that you want to take to court to try to get constitutional interpretation, you're not going to get it. Nigerians can predict that definitely you're not going to go far in that matter because the judiciary is already captured by the executive arm of government. I want to give you an instance. The state of emergency that was declared illegally by the president in Rivers State, citing insecurity or threats to security, threats to lives and property of Rivers State, which is just a phantom allegation. It didn't exist at all. There was no verifiable empirical evidence to support the declaration of the state of emergency in Rivers State. Then to even make it worse, the president unconstitutionally suspended the governor of Rivers State. And some opposition governors proceeded to the nation's highest court, the Supreme Court of Nigeria. The Supreme Court of Nigeria has a guideline on how to operate. There is a deadline within which a matter of urgent national importance should be heard. It shouldn't be more than 30 days or at most 3 months. But it's been more than 3 months since about 9 PDP governors proceeded to the Supreme Court to ask the court to interpret certain sections of the Constitution regarding the declaration of emergency that was done in Rivers State and the removal of the governor, the suspension of the governor by the president, to determine if those steps that were taken by the president are constitutional or legally permissible. But the Supreme Court has been, Supreme Court justices, the Supreme Court Chief Justice of Nigeria, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, who is the head of the judiciary in Nigeria, has refused to fix a hearing date for that matter, to a point that the man who was suspended as governor of Rivers State capitulated to the blackmail of the executive arm of government and to the blackmail of the minister who was actually working towards getting him impeached. So it is totally unacceptable that you have a government in place that has taken over the powers and the functions of the other two arms of government. That is the beginning of the major crisis of human rights. You can't even talk about human rights when you don't have checks and balances in the way Nigeria is governed. And then you have to talk about the basic fundamental, the fundamental right to life, for instance. A lot of Nigerians know that anybody can just get killed at any moment. If you're traveling, particularly, you're not so sure you're going to get to your destination from point A to point B. You have a lot of kidnappers, you have a lot of freelance armed gunmen all over the country, terrorists, they are all operating, roaming the streets, unrestrained. And there are certain parts of the country that you dare not travel to without making adequate security arrangements. So how do you even talk about respect for the fundamental rights of citizens when the citizens themselves do not have the right to life, cannot be protected if they are attacked by mass murderers? So these are the critical issues that you have to think, talk about.
A lot of people, when we argue on the X space, we talk about how quick it is for the West to respond when any of their citizens are kidnapped, either in Nigeria or anywhere in the world. They're quick to demand for and do everything in their power to be able to get that citizen back to. But when it comes to Nigeria, it's almost like it's us against us, and even in the outside world, we're still facing the same issue. But this conversation today is now asking, human rights and development, can Nigeria achieve both, or we are we are deceiving ourselves? Which one should come before the other, or can both be achieved either individually or together?
Well, it is usually better to to pursue the two objectives of human development and respect for human rights, if it is possible. Because a lot of democracies around the world are actually doing that thing, actually doing what I have just said. Countries like America, Canada, UK, and other Western developed societies in Europe, in America, in other parts of the country, other parts of the world are actually pursuing those two objectives together, and they're actually achieving a lot of it. Well, in Nigeria, we're neither pursuing human development, nor respect for fundamental rights of citizens. None of it. What we have in Nigeria, I hope you are even aware that a court, in fact, a national court, something similar to a court of appeal in Canada, had already declared that PDP and APC are terrorist organizations. So if you have a government that is not founded or grounded in law, that's what you get. You now get a court in a foreign jurisdiction making a pronouncement to the effect that the government that is even operational in Nigeria is a terrorist administration. That's what that court judgment infers. We're not here to say whether they are right or they are wrong, but that is exactly what you get when you have an administration that is neither pursuing the human development of capacity building or human development of citizens of the country, or making sure that agencies of government and individuals in Nigeria respect the fundamental rights of the citizens of the country. If you take one of the African countries that has done very well in terms of infrastructural revolution and human development, the country like Rwanda has done quite a lot, has achieved. Rwanda is almost like an advanced society when you compare it with a country like Nigeria, South Africa, or other countries within Africa. Rwanda, under Paul Kagame, has decided to go towards achieving the mandate of giving the Rwandan people a lot of development in the area of infrastructure, in the area of maybe human development. But Rwanda is a country that does not respect fundamental rights of citizens. But Rwanda has been able to achieve one of the goals, which is human development. And Rwanda also had achieved something. Yes.
I was about to argue that I agree that Rwanda has been experiencing rapid development, but they still have very tight state control, and it's almost like they don't have there's no respect for human rights in that state. It's like saying, I'm going to give you infrastructure, but I don't care who dies in the process, but you're going to get infrastructure. And if you look at South Africa too, South Africa is very big with rights protection here and there, but we still see deep inequality, existing both. And that's why I'm very concerned about, you've mentioned Canada, you've mentioned the US and the United Kingdom, if I'm correct, about how developed and how they have been able to achieve both in that sense. But if we're comparing it to African countries, it's almost like all African countries battle with the same problem. You're either facing infrastructure or you're facing human development. So is it possible for us to be able to achieve both? That's looking how we can now start emulating some of this country, or like countries like the UK, Canada, and the rest, or we just face being Africans and then pick one and then move ahead with it? What's the way forward for us?
Well, what is the way forward is this? You know, initially, some people believe that if elections are organized in Nigeria and the elections are not conducted in strict compliance with the due process of the law, you expect that Western democracies are supposed to impose certain kind of sanctions against the government of Nigeria that supervise an electoral robbery or electoral rigging or manipulation. But that is not the case. If we begin to expect that the Western countries that are democracies will be there for us when we conduct our elections and we don't follow the laws, they're not going to be there to help us. After all, most of these Western developed societies like America, like Canada, like UK, what they are after is to, first and foremost, their own, local politics, how to develop their people, how to develop their countries. They don't care about whatever happens to the rest of us. It's only recently that you now find a very significant courts of law in Canada making that kind of a pronouncement that you have political parties in Nigeria that do not obey the law when it comes to elections. But you would have expected that a country like the UK, a country like US, and other Western countries from which Nigeria borrowed a Western-style democracy that we're practicing, that if elections are conducted in Nigeria and the elections are not run in accordance with the due process of the law, that there has to be some kind of sanctions. Well, from time to time, you will read stories from the diplomatic community from America threatening to impose travel ban on certain category of officials who supervise over manipulated electoral process. But that is all we get. You get to find out that when elections are massively rigged, like the type of election rigging that we experienced in 2023, as soon as the elections was over, the American government posted the chief beneficiary of that electoral robbery in Nigeria. And business returned as usual between international democratic societies and Nigeria, where we say we're practicing democracy, and yet we don't respect the law when elections are to be conducted or when election is being conducted. So that is the crisis we face. So Nigerians need to realize that there's no godfather or there's no big brother anywhere outside of Nigeria that will help us to get things to work properly. For instance, you don't expect the Western world to teach you or to force you as if, you know, the problem we even have in the country is the crisis of leadership dovetails into the crisis of followership. Because both the followers in Nigeria and the leaders in Nigeria are almost in one bandwagon. The leadership are largely corrupt. They don't follow the law. They don't govern by the rule of law. And the followership themselves are actually not doing anything to ensure that those who are elected into offices abide by the due process of the law. And even when elections are taking place, like the recently conducted by-elections, you observe that ordinary voters, people in our position, the commoners, they came out to participate in the elections, and they were actually demanding to be bribed by politicians. So if you are an individual voter who has a voting card, voter's card or whatever they call it in Nigeria, you are about to exercise your right to decide who is going to be your governor, who is going to be your senator, who is going to be your House of Reps, who is going to be even your councillor at the local government level. And now you begin to demand for payment. And you actually go ahead to collect 5,000 naira to elect a person who is a misfit, a rogue, a criminal, a 419, a yahoo. You elect a yahoo boy to become a governor of a state. Or you elect somebody who does not have certificate, like the type they have in a state of the federation. I don't want to name the person, who doesn't have certificate, who just got his, I think, all his ordinary school cert, He had a lot of F9s all over the place. And he even obtained it about 2 years ago. And he's already a governor. And you have a lot of youths who have passed through the university system, who have PhDs, who don't have jobs. They're all over the place. And then when it is time for Nigerians to do the right thing, I'm now not blaming the leaders. I'm not blaming the leaders who have hijacked Nigeria and have pocketed their public funds to their own families. I'm blaming the followers of this country. When you have elections, you have opportunities to elect leaders that will serve you selflessly. You rather choose to collect 5,000 naira to mortgage your consciences. And after about 2 months, 3 months, or a year, that you have elected a rogue, a thief, into office as a governor, what do you expect? When you give a thief your money to keep for you, what do you expect the thief to do? Yeah, you expect that the thief will come back and give you your money? It's not possible now. It's not possible. That's why nothing works in Nigeria. That's exactly why nothing works in Nigeria. So we should stop this blame game of always blaming the leaders. We should also blame ourselves.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that issue. Let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll start to, address the people problem. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back shortly. Welcome back to Politics Uncensored. We are still discussing human rights or development, or human rights and development. Can Nigeria achieve both? And Comrade Emmanuel highlighted one of the things that I've been waiting for him to talk about since, and that's the human problem, the followership problem. We have spoken about what our leaders, the government, these are doing wrong, doing right. But every time there's a transfer of power from government to government, we still see the same results. And so it is now beyond an institutional problem. We now have a people problem. So now, Comrade Emmanuel, how do we now start to hold us as individuals accountable? Beyond holding the leaders accountable, how do we start holding ourselves accountable for ensuring that we are contributing to development and also ensuring that we are expressing or we are experiencing our rights as humans beyond all these root cause that we see? Every morning we wake up, we're seeing loads of news, bad news especially. If we see one good news, it's probably not good news for 24 hours. It's just a few hours, and then everything goes back to bad again. So how do we start to hold, humans or we as Nigerians accountable before holding our leaders accountable?
Yes, what we need to do as citizens of the country, even though it is cumbersome, it's a very difficult situation for some few Nigerians who cannot be bought. If you go to any polling unit, polling unit or polling center to cast your vote, if you have 50 people lining up to participate in the election, you will understand that more than 65–70% of those who are participating in that election are having the predisposition to collect bribes in order to vote. And these things happen openly. And then we have agencies of law enforcement, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the ICPC, you have the police. In a lot of cases, even the police, I don't want to include the EFCC because the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, you cannot pinpoint any particular time that the EFCC officials have participated in buying voters. But in a lot of places in this country during elections, particularly elections that are off cycle, we have seen cases where police people are participating in the buying of votes. It has happened in so many parts of the country. It happened in Edo State. The last election that happened in Edo State, it was virtually like a marketplace where even the police people were participating in buying up votes. So if you have a situation where a lot of Nigerians have already made up their mind that they're going to pick up the money, whether you like it or not, and then you even have a bunch of people who are supposed to be very decent Nigerians who go about encouraging Nigerians to collect the money. They will tell you, well, collect that money, the money is not your own, it's not their own. I mean, the money is your own, so collect it. If they give you, then vote for who you want to vote for.
Very
It
common
is a
phrase
very
that we
wrong.
hear.
It's a very wrong logic. Yeah, it's a wrong logic. It's like asking somebody to, well, go ahead and sleep with somebody's wife. After all, it's not your wife. That's exactly what it is. If you ask a prospective potential voter to collect money from an office seeker and vote for who he or she wants, it's as good as encouraging somebody to now, a married man to, or a married person to go about having sex with married women because they are not their wives. So it doesn't make sense. So we need to have a mass movement. We need to have a movement from the grassroots of individual Nigerians who will be vehemently opposed to vote buying. When they see situations like that, like the last election, 2023 election in Abuja, I can vouch because I was both an observer and a voter. I observed the election in Abuja as a civil society member, a civil society organization member, and I also participated as a voter in a part of Abuja. And I can tell you that substantially, the election that took place in Abuja, there were no instances of anybody trying to bribe anybody. As long as I know, within Abuja municipal area, you know, Wuse area, it never happened. So in parts of the country where those things happen, maybe in the rural communities in Abuja, it may have happened. Well, substantially, people participated, people voted according to their conscience. So if you have places where you have a predominance of Nigerian voters who are demanding for bribes, those who do not demand for bribes, if you look at it and you see that if you protest against voter inducement, they're going to beat you to pulp because some Nigerians are actually ready to even shoot you if you want to do the correct thing. When you find them committing a crime and you want to report them, they're ready to kill you. And if you have a situation where even the police are participating in buying up the votes, so it's difficult for anybody who is against it. For instance, if somebody like me is in a polling unit where others are being bribed, and I'm not going to collect 5,000 naira because apart from being demeaning, apart from even is something that is a desecration of the democratic ethos. It's even, you are not even dignifying your own self as a human being. To collect 5,000 naira, then you allow a criminal to get into office and rob the state of
4 years
millions
or
of
even
dollars.
more.
When I say millions, a lot of these politicians who are holding offices today, who we know, not only in Abuja here, where I live, but in other parts of the country, some of them get into offices with only about, let's say, 100,000 naira in their accounts. And by the time they finish 4 years, they're already multi-billionaires in dollars. It is unacceptable.
Thank you
So
very
what we need
much,
to do,
Comrade Emmanuel.
we should make use of our phones because the phones are available. We should make use of our phones. We should get these people who are collecting money and those who are giving the money, like some media houses have done in recent times, but they show it only once. There has to be big billboards all over the place. If you find that people are collecting money in Abuja to vote, let us have pictures of those people who are collecting money and those who are giving the money. Let us have billboards. People should actually donate money so that we can sponsor billboards across the
Understood,
city.
Emmanuel.
Where you have pictures of those who are collecting money.
We have run out of time, and I wish we can have this conversation for longer. But thank you for calling out, people that if you are keen on Nigerian development, you can't be standing on the fence or be a partaker of problems. So it is good. Thank you so much for joining the show. As it is now, Nigeria stands at a crossroad, if I would say. We can either choose a path where development is used as an excuse to silence freedoms, or we can start to demand a nation where progress goes hand in hand with dignity. The choice is not for the government alone, it is for every Nigerian citizen. The Nigerian we dream of is one where a child can go to school, a worker can speak out without fear, and communities can prosper without losing their homes. That future is possible, but only if human rights and development move together. I am the polyhumanitarian, and this has been Politics Uncensored. Until next time, let's keep believing in a Nigeria where dignity and progress walk side by side. Before I go, do ensure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Official Upgrade TV. You can interact with us further. Follow us on all our social media handles. Drop a comment, and most importantly, continue to watch all our shows. I'll see you again on Wednesday. So have a great day. Bye.